Today on Outside the Box Reviews, we are taking a look at the Bandai Tamashii Nations Fire Rodan. Or Radon if you want to go with the Japanese name. But heck, I grew up with the old Showa era movies, so he's always going to be Rodan to me, and it's spelled Rodan on the packaging. But yeah, after my foray into this line with Godzilla and King Ghidorah all coming in one fell swoop, I knew I needed more, and Rodan seemed like a really good choice for me. He's a fairly small figure, he's a lot more inexpensive than most of the other ones out there, and he comes with a lot of stuff. So from there my thought process was, even if Rodan's not the most impressive figure around, at least I'm going to have some cool accessories to go with my other figures. So let's take a look and see what all he came with and if the figure itself is any good. First up, we have Fire Rodan's display base, which is kind of cool. It's the same style base we got with King Ghidorah, except this one has the Fire Rodan image on here, a really cool little monochromatic picture of the character and his name. And then some copyright info that nobody cares about. But also, beyond just being a clear plastic, molded in with all the plastic are these little gold flecks of glitter. Now, if you've seen the movie, there's a scene late in the film where Rodan sacrifices himself and gives up his energy to Godzilla to help defeat Mechagodzilla. And it basically takes the form of this kind of glitter. It's really cool they added it into this display base. It looks really nice, and it's a cool tribute to the character. Now, if we ever do get a Mothra and a Batra, and fingers are crossed those will be revealed at Toy Fair this year, at least a Mothra. I need a Mothra, come on. I would think maybe they could use a similar thing to this, because I'm pretty sure they used the same freaking glitter, or some yellow, maybe not so shiny, for Mothra's poison. So it could be kind of a cool thing you could do that's similar but different. Now Rodan comes with two different ways to display him. He comes with this little hook here, which I keep referring to as like the Hot Toys base. That'll peg right in here. And it's what he was on at the beginning of this review. You take him and you slide him in here, and it kind of goes up around his butt and plugs in, his tail goes through it, and then his legs go down in front of it. And it kind of takes a little bit of messing with to get him to sit on there quite right. Now, for all intents and purposes, this is just fine. He looks good on it, and if you wanted him on the ground, it's a really nice way to display him. My one gripe with it is that when he's fully situated on it, his feet don't touch the ground. They are significantly higher than the ground. And it would have been nice to be more of a Hot Toys style where he would have his legs touching the ground, but the stand would still support him. And his legs are about as straight out as they go, so there's really no hope. I could bend his legs down, have his feet touching, like his toes touching the ground, I guess. But he's not supporting his weight by doing that. So that's a little bit of a bummer. He also comes with this kind of arm, which we saw with King Ghidorah, that will peg into the base here. It has a hinge at the bottom. You can also swivel it at the base. A mid hinge, and then a hinge up here at the top. And then we can add in this cradle. So that just pegs right in there. And then Rodan will rest right into that cradle. And it gives a pretty nice illusion that he is flying. Now once again, it's kind of like those puppets. I don't remember what the kind of puppets they are called, but the ones where there's people walking around in like totally black costumes, and they're manipulating the puppets, and the whole idea is you're just supposed to ignore the people, even though they're very plainly visible there. I feel like that's what this kind of stand is. It's very visible. If you're looking at it, you're going to see it. But as long as you ignore it and look at the bright, colorful monsters around it, it's not going to affect your perception of what's going on too much. And to be honest with you, I have intentions of building some kind of diorama for these characters eventually, though I had that same intention with my Predator figures and never got around to it. But I would like to build some kind of cityscape for them to be in that might disguise these stands a little better within whatever's going on. So this is kind of a neat way that you could display your Rodan in flying mode, and probably how I will have him displayed in my collection. Now, since I have King Ghidorah, I have these extenders, and I'm not using them all for his display. And you can actually take the cradle off, peg one of these in the top, and then peg the cradle back on top of that. Now these don't really fit in perfectly, so I would suggest being very careful with them and not forcing them. But this, well, it gives the same effect. You still have the cradle up top. It gives a good extension to it, so you could have Rodan flying higher than usual, which is kind of neat. Next up, we have a second display base. This one sporting the same kind of glitter within it. And then Pterodon Forever, Kazuma Aoki. Now, this is from the pilot of the Garuda, Kazuma Aoki. And it was his little logo. I think he had it on his helmet. He had it on his little mechanical pteranodon. He was just a giant flying reptile freak. He loved them. So I see why they wanted to put it on here, but to be honest with you, I feel like this would have been better served with something like the Garuda, which they did release in a very limited fashion. To me, it doesn't really work well as a piece to go with Rodan, even though it has the Pterodon thing on it. I don't know, it seems just kind of off. I would have rather had a clear stand, but the plus side is my display right now, it has a dark background to it, so when this is down on the ground, it's kind of hard to actually see the Pterodon thing. Even if I bring it back to the back of my backdrop here, you can kind of see it blends in a little bit just because it's negative space. We get another bendy arm that will peg right in here. And then Rodan comes with his uranium heat beam, which is really cool. It's like this pinky purple attack. It's got the big bursting end here with kind of the explosion going on. It's got a swirl going through it, which is really nice looking. And even where it will come out of his mouth, it kind of has a burst effect. Really nicely done. Really nicely shaped. And unlike the King Ghidorah ones, this one actually has a peg hole in the bottom. So you take it, and you peg it right into that arm. And now you have your fire blast, your uranium heat beam, that you can go and pose. From there, it's just a simple matter of getting the two stands lined up, getting the beam into Rodan's mouth, and now he's shooting out his attack, ready to take down Mechagodzilla or Godzilla himself. But wait, we're not done yet. We also get another stand, this one completely clear from any logos, but still with the glitter on it. And we also get yet another arm. You know the drill by now. Peg that right in there. And then we get one of the things that made me decide that this was going to be my next figure in this line. We get Godzilla's Mega Death Beam, whatever you want to call it. I'm sure there is an official name for it. From the end of Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla II. The aforementioned event where Rodan sacrifices himself for Godzilla, gives him some of his energy. Basically, you get this melding of that uranium heat beam and Godzilla's normal breath effect. And this thing is sweet. It's a translucent orange plastic, but there's been some red and deeper orange shading done on it that just looks stupendous. There's this spiral around the outside of it. It's almost a separate little piece. Kind of moves a little if you touch it. I want to be very careful with it. It kind of looks like veins going through it. Really cool. It kind of has a burst effect again, back where it goes in his mouth. And then this end here just reminds me of a cigar for some reason. But a really, really cool looking piece. And it's very, very long. If I had gotten the blue breath effect, I'm told this is actually a significantly longer breath effect than the one that originally came with Godzilla. Now, I gotta have the gripe that the blue breath effect should be easier to get. Every single Rodan figure comes with this. Only some of the Godzilla figures come with a blue breath effect. They also did an effect kit that had the Super X, it had a bunch of tanks and planes and stuff, it had another breath effect for Godzilla. Still an orangey red breath effect. I don't think it was this one exactly, but it was similar to it. It should be easier to get the classic Godzilla breath, and I can't believe it's such a pain in the butt to do it. But this, just like the uranium heat beam, you peg it right in here. So now you have the breath effect. So now we can grab Godzilla, put that right in his face, and now he's breathing fire. It's what I really wanted. This is what I wanted from the beginning. Godzilla breathing fire. So happy I have it now because it made me very sad that I had a stupid Iron Man funnel sticking out of Godzilla's mouth. Much, much better here. Much cooler. But wait, there's more. We get a Mechagodzilla alternate head. And I think you can guess by seeing this what the next figure on my wish list is from this line. This is sweet. The sculpting on it is phenomenal. It's just a beautiful head sculpt. Really cool. But the big difference here beyond the normal Mechagodzilla is you can see this eye here is painted normally. It kind of has a glossy sheen to it. Looks almost like it would have had a light piping or something. And this eye is blacked out and dead and cracked. That's because this is the head where Rodan has pecked out the eye. It's really a nice touch. Something very subtle and very small, but probably not a cheap accessory to give us a full head sculpt here. So really cool on Bandai for doing this. Really cool. And this head also has the articulated jaw, so you could actually open that mouth and has a little cannon in there or whatever. Super cool. I really need to get this Mechagodzilla figure now because this is just sweet. This is making me all kinds of happy. Really nice. And like I said, ball joint peg right there, so you just pop it right on the other figure. But because I don't have them yet, what I'm thinking about doing is just putting him in the display, like down on the ground, like he's been ripped off, and maybe put some little wires coming out of the bottom here. They'd fit in here just fine without messing anything up. Just have some like wires hanging out, and just, this is the decapitated Mechagodzilla head. That could be kind of fun. For a figure that retails around 40 bucks, I think I paid about 30 for it. Really, you get a lot of stuff. It's really impressive how much you get. And we haven't even gotten into the figure yet. So why don't we do that before I get completely sidetracked? As we have with some of the other Bandai figures, let's start with articulation. He has a wonderful range here. He has a pin and socket style foot, so you can hinge it forward and back. You can also rotate it. He has what appears to be a double jointed knee, but I can't get the top part to move on either of them. So it may just be a single jointed knee with that cap in there where you can rotate it. It's rotatable on both ends. And once again, gives a good range. You don't need Rodan to bend his leg much anyway, so double jointed knee is unnecessary. He has a swivel up here at the upper thigh if you could isolate it enough from the other joint. He also has a ball joint up here at the hip. You can go forward and back a little bit. It's kind of hard. It's kind of at a V angle as well. But if you want to play with it, you can get some poses out of it. Once again, Rodan, if you're going to use his legs, he's just going to be perched on something. The Fire Rodan from the 90s didn't walk around and do stuff. The old school Rodan did, but this guy really just flew around. So there's no real need to have super articulated legs, but we have very nicely articulated legs, and they remind me of a very nice 3 3/4 inch action figure, both in size and articulation. Back here at the tail, something Bandai's been doing very well with all these figures. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 segments and Rodan's little spiky tail back here. Really cool. Side to side, up and down, all that good stuff. Now these wings make me happy because I think they're showing me what King Ghidorah's wings are supposed to function like. It makes them make a little more sense to me. He has these kind of armpit joints in here that can rotate and also move in and out and up and down, I guess, a little bit. They're very nice joints, and I believe this is the same idea that King Ghidorah has. Those just feel so fragile, I don't want to mess with them. But Rodan's feel nice and robust, which is really good. And it's cool that you can rotate those arms forward. It lets you get some different action poses. And if you did want to pose him more like his Showa counterpart, where he did kind of go along the ground a little bit, you could actually get some cool looks out of this. I think you could get him far enough down that you could really get some cool looking poses out of it. You're going to have a break in the sculpt here, but it still looks nice. You also have a ball joint on the outer end of that for the normal wing itself, so a full ball jointy motion there, and the two combined really gives you a great range of motion. The wing has 3 different segments, and each has a little hinge fold in here. So as you saw in the beginning of the video, you can actually have him like totally folded up with his wing, which is very nice detailing. And even the little hand moves. It can go up and down, and it can also rotate a little bit. Now, this one will rotate. This one's not working for me. I think it really is supposed to rotate, but it could actually be more of something's loose on this hand, because this hand was a little messed up when I got it out of the package. But easily fixable. But either way, just the fact that they hinge is pretty freaking cool. Now up here at the neck, he kind of has 2 separate neck joints. There's this midsection here and the upper section here. So they both are ball joints. You could rotate them. You can go up and down. The big flaw with this guy is the head. Just like with Godzilla somewhat and King Ghidorah, every time I move his head, it pops off. It has a very small peg with a ball joint, and it just likes to come off a lot, which is a bummer. Definitely not my favorite thing. But you can get it into whatever pose you need. You just have to be very careful with it. But it has the full range. You could turn it. You can go up and down with it. You just got to be very gentle. And as with the other figures, the mouth opens, and it is on that ball joint, so you could, turn it and twist it and go side to side with it, even though it doesn't make sense from a character point of view. For the sculpt on Rodan, they did a phenomenal job. He has this cool little crest of horns coming off the back of his head. They're painted very nicely. The head itself is painted well. The one thing I butt up against with this sculpt is something that was in the movie, so I can't fault them for making it look like this, but he has kind of these dead fish eyes. Like, they really just remind me of when you go to a grocery store and you have the fish sitting up there in the freezer counter ready to be purchased whole. There's just no life in them really, and they're just kind of there, and there's no real eyebrow to it, so it's just these big gaping eyes. Once again, it's something that the puppet had in the movie, but it just looks a little goofy. He has a cool looking beak. It's gray, but it has some of the red accents going on to it. And inside, he has his tongue sculpted, little teeth, and even the roof of his mouth has great detailing on it. Very cool. I like that the underside of his neck also goes to a lighter shade. Different kind of scaling down here. We get onto his chest, which has all these little spikies on it, which feel pretty durable. I'm sure if you messed with it, they probably would pop off if you were rough with it. But they feel pretty nice and durable on there, which I'm kind of surprised about. On the back, of course, he has the full spine of spikes. Really nicely done. And just some nice texture over the whole figure. There's not a whole lot of detail on him that you could do besides just give it some nice monster texture. And they definitely have achieved that on this figure. Now, the one place you really can do detail is the wing. And there's some cool texture up here towards the edges. It gets rougher and it's smoother down here in the membrane. The claw is kind of nicely done. But the one thing, and I don't know if it's going to show up on my video, my camera might just not be good enough quality for it, but he has very, very subtle blue veins on each part of his wing. And it's not symmetrical across the wings. They're different on each side. And they're visible on the top and bottom. And holy cow, what an amazing thing to add on to the character. It gives him a whole different shade of realism to have those veins in there. Just something that they could have easily left out. Nobody would have complained. But holy cow, great paint detailing. It's so subtle and so perfect. You can't help but love it. And here you can see how Rodan stacks up size-wise to Godzilla. On the flight stand, he sits at a pretty decent level. One thing that does bum me out that I forgot to mention earlier is because of the angle you can get his head at and the angles of the flight stand and everything, the cradle that holds him puts him a little taller than you're possibly able to get the uranium heat beam sitting at, so it always has to be shot at a downward angle, and it ends up kind of hitting a little lower than I would like it most of the time when you're trying to pose it. You can't really have him aiming at his opponent's head for the most part, which is a bit of a bummer as well. But he's in really good scale with Godzilla. He's a smaller figure, but he comes with a significantly lower price tag, which helps that below. And all the accessories he comes with are just phenomenal and a lot of stuff, which is really neat. Another thing I do wish is that the extender trick that will let you make Rodan fly really high above the battle would work for the uranium heat beam. It just doesn't work. But it would be so cool to have him flying super, super high over everything, firing his laser down at his enemies. And it's one thing that if I do build my diorama, another thing I'm looking into doing is giving him a fairly tall, fairly wide building that we could hide that stand on top of, so I can extend him up super high and then have his beam coming off the roof of a building or something to give it that extra range and reach and height. I think that could be really cool to have him like that. So I have to be honest with you guys here. This is the second time I've shot this review. For whatever reason, when I was first going to review this figure, I kind of had sour grapes towards it. I wasn't as impressed as I was with Godzilla and King Ghidorah. He just wasn't as cool of a figure in my mind. And my basic thoughts while recording the review were to express He's not as cool as the other ones. He's not that great of a figure. He's an easy pass. And as I shot it and as I played with it, I started to love it more and more and more. And I realized by the end of it, while I was saying the words that I'd gone in intending to say, I had no conviction behind them. Let's face it, this guy's just cool. I'm going to recommend him. He does not get anywhere as near as high of a recommend as Godzilla and King Ghidorah, but he's still freaking cool, and at the price point, you really can't beat it. Like I said, I found another warehouse deal on Amazon like I did for King Ghidorah. I snagged him for about $30, and I believe $40 is his normal MSRP, so not a tremendous savings, but a fairly good one. And I'm very happy with the purchase. I think I would have been happy with the purchase at $40 the more I think about it. He comes with so much stuff. The fact that he and his heat beam come together, that would have been good enough. I don't think anyone would have complained if that was what the figure was. But the fact that we get a gigantic, cool-looking blast for Godzilla, the fact that we get 2 different ways to display Rodan on his stand, and the fact that we get that extra Mechagodzilla head, which now I realize may be less of a thing of, oh, here's something cool for free extra, and more of, hey, don't you want to buy that Mechagodzilla figure? But still, definitely going to recommend this guy. I don't know what I was thinking the first go around on this, but he's a freaking cool figure, and I'm very happy I got him. He's just not as cool as the other ones, mostly because of the size thing. But I know I'm going to have to try to hunt down that Mechagodzilla, and hopefully Toy Fair has some tasty Godzilla morsels for us. At least maybe we could finish out the Heisei series. I know Destroya is coming out in a few months from now. They've teased a Biollante. That one is going to be gigantic. I think Biollante is at least as tall as King Ghidorah, if not more. I think he's the biggest monster Godzilla's ever fought. So that would be a major, large piece I'm not sure I'd be too interested in. But a Mothra. Dying for a Mothra here, guys. If you're watching this, Bandai, please, we need Mothra. I'd even settle for the larva. A 2-pack would be phenomenal. The larva and adult Mothra. But Mothra is fairly large. Mothra is larger than Godzilla by far. And would make Rodan look very small. So I'm not thinking we're going to get more than just the one figure in a package. They could prove me wrong. There's always that possibility. But I'd love to see what they come up with. And hopefully we won't have to wait too much longer to see some more cool stuff from them. So make sure, as always, you head over to Outside the Box Reviews on Facebook and like it over there. Right now, I'm running a poll, and I'm trying to see which Predator you guys want me to review with the next Predator Week. I have either the cloaked classic Jungle Hunter Predator from Toys R Us, or the Series 2 Unmasked Berserker Predator. Not sure which one I want to throw in there, so I'm going to let you guys go on there, find the poll, vote, and decide which figure gets thrown into Predator Week. So I'm very excited to see which one you guys are going to pick. I'm sitting on pins and needles over here. Voting for that, I believe I said in my last video, would end Sunday night. It may run a little bit longer than that, just depending on when I get this video posted. I may want to give it a little extra time, but think of Sunday night, which is the 13th of January 2013, as being the end date, and it may just extend a little beyond that. But this has been another Outside the Box Reviews. Stay tuned for more to come.